welcome y'all here to the Halter Breaking side of the Youth Field Day, virtual Youth Field Day. My name's Matt Warren, and glad to be here with you virtually. What we have here is a heifer. First time she's been in here. She's been with weaned last week, and so we're going to work with her and see how she does as far as halter breaking. One thing to always remember when you go to select your show calf for the upcoming year, you always want to make sure you talk with the breeder, maybe look and do some research on genetics. But also when you go to the pasture to look for that next calf, make sure when you walk in there, if you see one that picks his head up and runs to the other side of the fence, don't look at him anymore. It's not worth it. You know, it can be a pain, you know, somebody can get hurt, and you'd rather be encouraged by other than discouraged. And so we always try to find a calf that's relatively calm when you're just walking around out in the pasture with them. One of the things that I like to always have with me is just a regular show stick. I actually have a comb on the bottom side of it to help it with the scratching of them. But my other thing that I use is a halter. This rope halter, it's just a regular rope halter, but it also has a ring on it. This ring has allows it to slide, and this helps relieve the pressure. So when I pull on her and she walks toward me, it relieves the pressure versus staying tight. And so this is just one of the other halters that I like to do when I'm halter breaking these cattle, sort of relieves the pressure on it a little bit. And so, but that's sort of what we do in this type of method. Is it the right or wrong way to halter break? I don't know if there is one. This is just a way that works for me. Maybe it'll work for you, and I hope it does. It's a method that you're letting the animal know that you're not here to hurt them. And it just sort of makes you build that bond with the animal. All the animals have a flight zone. As you can see, as I get closer to her, she wants to move around. She's a little nervous in here, hasn't been in a pen by herself like this. I use about a 16 by 16 pen, and what I'll do is just sort of stand in here in the center and let her run around me, walk around me, whatever she may want to do. It's just breaking that flight zone that she may have. It's sort of like your personal space. You don't want somebody just to walk up into your personal space. Same thing with the animals. They don't want you to come in their personal space. So it makes it a little more challenging sometimes if you have a real flighty calf, a real nervous calf. But that's sort of what we do. If you'll get in your pen, stand in the center, and most of the time they'll run around. As you saw when we first put her in here, she was running around. She was sort of nervous. Now the other thing that I have is I have a calf behind me. And so that calf helps keep this animal just a little calmer as well. That way she's not by herself. If you take her out from all the other calves and put her by herself, she'll get a lot more nervous than what she is now. But what I'll actually do is sit here, and as you can see, she stopped. And so since she stopped, what I'll do is I'll walk away from her just a little bit. Relieve the pressure. Now you see that she looks at me, and she's saying, okay, you're not a threat anymore. And so I'll give her 10 seconds, 15, then I'll walk back to her. And as you can see, she gets a little more nervous. And I'll just stand here until she's calmed down just a little bit. And as you can see, she's sort of not bothering her as much. She's calming down a little more. I'll go ahead and step back off. And as you see, she just sort of looks back and watches to see what I'm doing. I'm really letting her know I'm not a threat to her. And I just do this for several times. And this just sort of helps me break that flight zone barrier just a little bit. And so as I just let her move around, I just let her move around. And as she sort of stops, I'll back off of her. Relieve the pressure. It's sort of like just, you know, if you pull and pull and pull, they don't know when they're doing right or when they're doing wrong. So if you relieve the pressure, it allows them a little reward, and they know what's right and what's wrong. And so I'll step back to her and let her just walk around. Now, one thing to always remember is they do have a capacity to kick. So you need to make sure that your animal either is not going to kick or you're out of the way and you're not forcing. Most of the time they kick is when it's a sudden reaction, like you slap them on the butt or they're just get spooked for some reason. That's sort of the reason they kick. My next step after I see that she's settled down is this is where I have my show stick for. This is all this is, an extended arm. Instead of my arm being out here, I can use the show stick. So what I'll do is I'll take the show stick and I'll just lay it on. As you can see, she gets a little nervous. You can watch her tail. The motion of her tail tells me how nervous she is. And so she is a little nervous with it. But I just set it on her and she's going to run around. But here in a second, she'll stop. See how she stopped? Yeah, she's still a little nervous, but she's slowing down. She's not running as much. And so now that she's sort of calm, I'll take her away from her. Relieve the pressure. Let her just stand there for a few minutes. And I'll walk back to her. Do the same thing. As you see, she's going to get nervous again. But I'll scratch her. Let her know everything's okay. And she's standing there good. So I'm going to relieve the pressure. One thing about animals too is you notice she'll look at me. They still have that predator sensory. And so that's one reason why I say you never want to go head to head onto an animal. If you try to go head to head in an animal, you're going to have a lot more resistance. But you always go either from behind the point of the shoulder. If you're going to do anything, go start at behind the point of the shoulder where it's on the hip or right there. You never want to face them head to head just because it's sort of intimidating to them. It's just sort of like somebody staring you in the face. It's sort of really intimidating to them. So you always just start sort of behind. I always like to start here on the hip, and I just scratch them. And you see her tail's not twitching near as much. And I'll just relieve the pressure. And that's sort of what I do to start breaking that flight zone area. The other thing that growing up, I used to pick the calves when I buy them from the ranch or producer, put a halter on them, put them on the trailer, take them home, and usually tie them up. That's the way I grew up doing it. And yes, like many others, we hooked them to a truck or hooked them to a horse or something to pull them to teach them to lead. I think this is a very more beneficial method. I think it's a way that the animal gets used to you a lot quicker, and they see that you're not a threat, that you're not going to hurt them. And so it works out really well. And as you can see, she's calmed down really considerably well. So I just back off, I give her a little relief, then I start again. And it's one of these other things, you got to remember to have patience. Patience is a big player in this. Don't get over excited, try not to get too nervous, because when you get nervous, they get nervous, and when you start moving really fast, they start moving really fast. So do everything you do with these cattle, move slowly, be calm with them. And so as you can see, she's standing here. And so what I do is, as I said, this is my extended arm, so I start using my regular arm. And as you can see, she gets a little nervous when I get a little more closer to her. So that's okay. I'll still brush on her, still got my show stick on her. I just take a step, let her know it's all right, and I'll relieve the pressure. And it's always good to see her just sort of look at me and let me know, okay, he's rewarding me. And so that's what I like to see. If we stand here, she's still a little nervous, I'll let her wait till that tail starts twitching. And as you see, it starts twitching when my hand gets up. So now it's starting to relax a little bit. That's fine. She's going to move out of the way. I'm not going to force her to stop. Just start again. And that's one thing about it. When you see her start getting nervous again, you just start over again. So she's doing really well, so I'll just back off. Relieve the pressure. And so what we would like to do is go ahead and step forward just a little bit more and do it one more time. And as she stands there, you can either use your arm. This is the first time I've ever touched this heifer. Usually I just have her out here in the pen. I just, like I said, just weaned her off the cow last week. I've been feeding her here with the steer, but yet this is the first time we've touched her. So she's doing really well. Gets a little nervous. And that will happen when you're with her tail. She'll twitch this and maybe grab this. My other thing on this is also making sure that the panels are anchored down, because sometimes they'll try to go underneath the panels, but you may want to try to make sure they're anchored down. What we're doing here now, we just came back to her, gave a break, come back to her, and got back in the pen. She gets a little nervous again as we get into the pen, as we get by her. That's one thing I want y'all to remember is it's not a one-time deal. You may give her a break. It's like a teenager. You know, they have the, you know, your attention span is not that long. And so the same thing for them. When they get tired, they'll get tired, and you'll know, okay, I'm tired of this. And so what we'll do is give them a break, and then we'll come back in there and start over again. And that's why we talk about being patient with it. So we always got to remember that we try to be patient with the animal and give them a little rest if they need a rest as well. And so you have to remember all animals are like people. They have their own personality. Like this heifer, you know, she's a decent heifer when she's out here. She gets in here, she gets a little nervous, and that's typical. Some animals may have a little more nervous, so it may take you a little longer. I have seen where I've halter broken an animal like this, and in 2 days I had them walking up and down the road. I've had them where I've spent a week or maybe a week and a half in this little pen with them before they actually started calming down. It all depends on the animal. They're sort of like people. They all have their different personalities. And so it's going to tell you how long you need to spend with them. The biggest thing is safety, making sure you're safe, you know, and you build a little trust in the animal before you go try and just put a halter on them. And so that's sort of what I want to make sure y'all remember is, you know, sometimes we can refer them to people and say they have personalities just like we do. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not so good. And so it all depends on the animal. And so we're going to go ahead and start back on her again and start scratching on her. I just start from the steps again, and she seems to be calming down already, which is good. She's sort of noticing about me, so I'm going to step back, go ahead and give her that relief of pressure. Once again, I'll step to her, you see her move. I'll go ahead and give her a little more pressure on her until she relaxes a little bit. One of the things also I've seen, you know, this is sort of like in horse training, one of the things they talk about relieving the pressure. You watch the ears on a horse, or you watch their lips, if they move their lips or whatever, and they just sort of, that shows that they're relaxed. Same thing in a heifer. The biggest thing I look for on this heifer is the twitching of her tail. See her tail start twitching. Now it stops, a little relaxed. I see where her ears are, she's just looking at me. If she's looking away, trying to find a way out, we know that she's still a little nervous about it. But now I think she's getting a little more relaxed. But as we can say, as I take a step, she's going to move again. As you see, she's going to move. And so what I'll do is just keep working at that. Let her stop, take another step, and let her stand. As she moves, I'll let her move. I'm not going to try to force her to stop. I'm going to let her walk around where she needs to walk. I'll use my extended arm again if I need to. And just sort of scratch her. And as you can see, because I have this calf behind us, she's going to stop and watch him a little bit. And so it makes her a little more, not as nervous, if you want to say. And so what I'll do is just keep on working with her here a little bit. This is the biggest part of halter breaking, is breaking that barrier, breaking that flight zone between you and her. And so it's going to take, this is probably the step that I would spend the most time on. If I had to spend time on a step, this would be it. Because it's going to this is where you actually start breaking that barrier down between you and her and building that relationship, building that trust with you. And so that will go on into the next step when she starts understanding, okay, you're not here to hurt me. It's going to make the next 2 or 3 steps really easy. And so, as we can see, we just let her run around. But as you can see, I'm getting my hands on her a little more and a little more every time. One thing I may do is, if she stops and she don't want me to get, I'll go ahead and give her a little more rewards than what I've been giving her. She stopped there, start again. I just keep my hand here. I'm not touching her, but yet she's not moving either. So I'm gonna give her a little reward for that. I'll start again. Move around. And everything's slow. What we're doing is slow. As you can see, she's standing there. I don't have the stick. I'm using my arm. I'm going to give her a reward. And back off of her. And we'll start again. And you can actually watch them. See if they're fixing, watch their feet. If they're fixing to take that step, just sort of be patient, let her stop, then ease to them. If you have to, use your arm again, your extended arm. As you can see, that works a little better sometimes because it scratches them. And then see my arm sort of going down the stick, so they already see a arm on them already, so it's not going to bother them as much. Just walk around, which is fine. And this just sort of breaks down that barrier that you're wanting to break down, like we talked about before. And it's just going to, you know, time it, you know, like I said, every animal's different, so it may take a little longer. And it's also how much time do you want to spend with them? Are you spending, you know, 30 minutes a day? Are you spending 30 minutes in the morning? Maybe come out in the evening and do it again. That depends on how much time you want and how much success you're going to have as well. And so you have to remember, you know, it's consistency. And if you do it one time right now, then come back 2 or 3 days later, you're going to be starting totally over again because they'll forget about it. And so you're starting totally over. So if you can be consistent when you start this halter breaking process, go ahead and plan on the next 3 or 4 days being in the pen with them. It could be 30 minutes at a time. It could be 15 minutes at a time, but plan on being in them. And so it also, I believe, it helps you as an exhibitor to know your animal just a little more. Understand your animal, build that relationship with you and your animal. So when you do get to the part where you start walking these animals, you have a little bit of relationship, you understand your animal just a little more, you know what she's expected to do or what she's capable of doing. And so that's the one thing I'd like to. But that's one thing I wanted to go ahead and talk about was you got to build the relationship, break this flight zone. And what we'll do is I'll continue on with this, and then in our next segment, we'll go ahead and put the halter on. Welcome back. We got the heifer here again. I've actually been working with her for about 2 days in this round pen again, getting her a little more used to me. And when I say 2 days, I'm talking maybe 15 minutes in the morning, maybe 20 minutes in the evening, 30. I don't do a long session at a time. You know, I like the animal to rest a little bit as well. But one thing I did notice is you can definitely do this as well to help a little bit. She does like little treats, like pellets. And we did find this out, and that helps you break that comfort zone just a little bit. And we'll see if she'll like them. Bend down. And so she likes the pellets a little bit, and that just sort of helps breaking that little barrier between you and her. And so that's one of the things you can think about. I just sat in here yesterday with a chair in the middle to let her come to me. And come on, girl. But anyways, she likes the pellets. You know, you can use them as treats. I don't recommend stuff like marshmallows or human food, because they're already their stomach's used to the animal feed. But anyways, what we're going to do here now is go ahead and put a halter on her. As you can see, she's still sort of skittish. She's not too bad. She still lets me touch her, but she don't want to just stand there for me, which is fine. That's okay. And but she is used to me a little bit, and she knows I'm not going to hurt her. So what I got is the halter that we talked about earlier, and I'll just take it, just sort of rub her with it, and she's fine, you know, with it just a little bit. And we'll just rub her down with it. If your animal happens to be where you can just pet him all over by this point, that's great. This heifer just not at that point, but we're going to speed things up just a little bit. If she put the halter on her, go ahead and put the halter on her, and that's what we'll do. But since she don't want me to get to her head, I use this show stick as my fishing rod. This show stick can be very diverse. It can be a arm, or it can be a fishing rod too. And so that's sort of what I'll actually do, is sort of let her see it a little bit and just sort of drop it on her head. And as you can see, and then you can just take your hook, put it where it needs to go. And I'd let it sit on her head for a second to figure out what it is. Take the hook, move it where it needs to go. The biggest thing is getting it, and she could throw it off, but your biggest thing is getting it down over her. And so you got it there. And she will throw it off every now and then, just like that. So it's not the easiest thing, but sometimes it works for me, and it makes it easier to. And if you go from the bottom jaw first and then try to put over her ears, sometimes it works a little better that way. And also, if you happen to be in the ring and your animal gets away, your show stick is the best thing to use to try to get a hold of the animal's lead rope. So that's something to think about. If your animal ever gets away and won't let you catch it, you can use your show stick to pick that lead rope back up to grab them. And as you can see, I got the halter on her now, and I just sort of let her know what it is. This is the first time she's had the halter on her. And so what we'll do is just let her hold on to it. Get my show stick. As we said, the extended arm. And I have her on the show stick. And what I always do, I don't ever try to get her head. I get at the end of it. And then I'll just accidentally just give her a little pressure, and then I relieve the pressure. Same thing as we was when we were working with her, breaking that flight zone. Relieve the pressure. Same thing. I hold until she relaxes. And she's never had a halter, so this is her first time. And I don't try to pull her, I just keep a little tension on it. And see, she settles down with it. And so I'll relieve. This is where it's very important on having that ring on it. It's because it relieves the pressure. It lets that rope slide back under her jaw so it don't stay tight. And the reason I also use this is when I put that halter on her, I have to do it every day. So I'm always in there doing it every day versus a halter that just has a chain and a lead rope dragging. You're not getting right up on them. Versus now I'm forced to get up on her, which makes her get more used to me messing with her head, messing with her just a little more, and you're breaking that flight zone a little easier as well. And so this is sort of what I do. And I stay at the end of the rope. I don't try to get right on her. And I'll just pull her a little bit. And remember, when you start to work these animals and lead them, always pull them from the side. When they take that step, you get back. When you pull, they cross over, watch the front feet. She takes that step, I get back to her. I relieve the pressure. This is how you start leading them, breaking them to lead. If you start getting into a point where you're trying to pull them, lead them, even if you have one that's halter broke but he won't lead, if you try to go head-on match with him, trying to pull him head-on, you're in a tug-of-war practice. It's a 500-pound calf versus a 150-pound person, a 100-pound person. You're not going to win. Yes, they'll buckle every now and then, come on, but if you want to do it fast, it's just like me if we were in a tug-of-war. If somebody pulled me, if I'm standing like this and somebody pulls me from the side, I'm going off balance and I'm going to take that step. That's exactly the same thing I'm doing here. I pull her from the side, she takes that step, I relieve the pressure. And she realizes every time she takes that step, we relieve the pressure, that she's doing right. That's the problem I have when we start hooking them to a truck, hooking them to a tractor, trying to make them lead. They don't know when they're doing right and when they're doing wrong because it's a constant pull. But if we can take her and pull them to the side, pull them off balance, and they take a step to me, I relieve the pressure, they know, okay, that's right. That's what I'm supposed to do. That feels good that they relieve the pressure. Well, then once they take one step, make them take 2 or 3, relieve the pressure. You may be going in circles, but that's okay. They will start leading a lot easier. And so that's one thing I want y'all to remember about practicing and getting them to lead. Pull them from the side. Don't pull them head on to head on. And so as we can see, she comes to me, I relieve. She comes to me, I relieve. I relieve. Come to me. I'm going to relieve the pressure. And so this is sort of what we need to, you can work on in the small ring, because when you turn them out in a big one, she's going because she don't like the heifer, and you may be following behind her. So we start them out in a small pen, getting her used to it, and then we'll move to a little bigger pen, not a big open pasture, but just a little bigger pen. And that's what we'll do next. Here in just a second, we'll put her in this little bigger pen. And one thing, don't hesitate if you want to, at this point, you want to just work with them, I would say probably a day or two, and then you can start tying them up and getting them used to it, standing there. But you're okay here. And so what we'll do now is we'll get ready to go and let her loose in the big pen, and we'll see what happens. Now don't try to hold her still or pull it tight because then she fights it. But what I'll actually do is actually just sort of get it, pull her to me a little bit, and then let her stand. And I'll walk away, pull her to me, and relieve the pressure. I'm not trying to stop her, but one thing about being in a smaller area like this, when she does run off from you, you don't have to let it go. Like if we were in a big area, she'd run off, I'd probably have to let it go. And so it's something that we're not, once one gets away from you out in the yard, out in the pasture, it starts becoming a habit. They realize they can get away from you. That's one big part of tying them up. When we tie them up, they realize they can't get loose, and so they're staying there. And so when you get a hold of the rope, they're thinking the same thing, okay, I can't get loose. And that's sort of why we tie them up. Once you progress in your moving with them, walking around, that's when we start gradually tying their head up. I do not tie their head up first thing. I like to tie it sort of even so they're comfortable too. Because one thing they're going to do when you tie them up, they're going to pull and try to get away, just like you got a big marlin on the end of the fishing rod. They're going to try to get away from it. But this helps calm it down just a little bit and tone it down a little bit. And they'll realize, okay, it's not that bad. And so as you can see, she's starting to settle down just a little bit. And so this is where, and that's one thing about having a long end. I don't ever try to get right at her head because she's still a little new to it. And then plus it keeps me a little safe as well. If she happens to just jump or run, I'm not right by her. But if I get off from her, she feels a little more comfortable. I pull, and she'll start walking a little bit. I'll let her stop. And then I'll pull. And as you see, she starts coming to me. And so this will go on for probably another, like we said, just the same way when we were out there getting her used to us. We can also do this for several days before we actually turn them out. I have had them where we could walk them out in the pasture in the yard the next day. I have had them where it's been a week before I can actually get them out in the yard. But it does work. Try it. And the other thing too, don't hesitate after you've been in here for 1 or 2 days to go ahead and tie her up and let her just stand there. And then when you get, I usually would tie them up maybe 15 minutes. And then when I get done, I'll probably walk them like I'm doing here and then just try to ease up there. And that's one thing about having this is because sometimes you can actually pull them to you to get that head to come to you a little more and get them closer to you. And like right now, some of these animals don't like to be scratched on the head or don't like you to get right at their head. And so this sort of helps break that just a little more. And so that's one thing about it. We can always tie them up, leave them, but when I untie them, I'll bring them back in here, and then I'll try to take that halter off myself, and that's really relieving the pressure, giving them that reward. But I try not to do it when they're really excited and trying to get away from everything. I'll let her calm down, settle down, and then I will take the halter off to give them that reward. But one thing to remember, always pull from the side. Don't get head on. When they take that step, watch that front feet. She get, and then I get back to her. Same thing when you're leading. Same thing when you're leading. And she will turn around. Your necktie will get on the opposite side, and that's fine. Just take it, make a loop around them. And this is also why it's one of the big important to make sure if you have panels or something that they're secured tightly, because this is where they will try to get out. Stick their head down low and try to pull out a little bit. And so, but make sure they're anchored down tightly, because every animal is different, and they may be fine in there. You get them in here on a halter, they may turn into a different animal. You never know. And that's what we're trying to do, is build our trust with them. And you as an exhibitor, if you're doing this, you learn more about your animal, more about what they're thinking and when they're going to do something. Because you can watch their ears, you can watch their tail, as they're getting excited, they're fixing to try to run from you, so be ready for it. So you learn a lot more about your animal, you build a little more trust in your animal. But this is sort of how we halter break. This would just take time. Sometimes, like we said, I would take time and then I'd move to a bigger pasture area, a little paddock or something, before I actually let her out in the yard, and just to make sure she leads. But what we'll do is, at this point, just continue to keep a little pressure on that halter and let her get used to it. And then after she stops, that's when I just sort of pull to me, and it gives, and we're good. And so that's basically how my halter breaking process works. It's not a miracle worker, but it's a process that does work for me. You can take what works for you. Remember, everybody's a little different, everybody's schedule is a little different, every animal is a little different. So you have to take what works for you, and then take that and put it to your project and make it fit your schedule. And so that's sort of what we like to do, and try to get her just moving a little bit. And what I'll do here in just a little bit is I'll just go ahead and tie her up, and then just let her sort of stand there and get used to it. If you have another animal, it's okay to have another animal tied up there with them. That way they don't feel like they're by themselves and a little more nervous. If you do not, that's fine too. It gets them used to being there, being tied up. And so that's sort of what we're going to continue to do as we work with this heifer. I just wanted to let y'all know the process that we have. As you can tell, she's not what I call a lovey-dovey heifer, one that you can just sort of scratch all over. And a lot of heifers are like this. Steers sometimes tend to be a little more docile. Heifers just sort of tend to be a little more, like to stay away a little bit, if you want to say. But still, they do well. Some of them are different than others. And I hope this helps in some of your halter breaking techniques and some of the ways you handle your animals. And what we'll do is we'll show you a clip here of a finished project in just a little bit. Alright, what we're going to do now is go ahead and tie her up. It may be a little faster than we'd like to see, but it's okay, because sometimes I've already been pulling on her, let her know what the halter is. Sometimes we do have to speed it up just a little bit, just to get her halter broke. So what I'm going to do is just sort of ease her here to the post, and we're going to tie her up. I'm sure she's probably not going to like it as much, but that's okay. She'll have to that's how she gets used to that halter and gets used to it not giving. And so that's one of the things we need to try to remember, because when they tie up and they get away, the knot comes unloose or something, they get away, they realize, hey, I can get away. So that's why we need to make sure when we tie them up, that we tie them up, pretty decent. So we'll go ahead and do that here. And it could be a rodeo. Like we talked about, every animal's a little different. And she just don't like the halter on her, which is fine. And as we can see, we got the halter, I made a loop around, but if you try to stay inside there, you may get hurt. So this may be one of them areas where you either have somebody else on the outside that can do it, or you can work it yourself. But when she does jump, she could jump on top of you. So this is not the greatest position you want to be in. What I'll do is I'll just tie her off. Scratch her, sort of move out of the way. And then I'll walk off and just let her stand. When you have too much slack on it, that gives them more room to just jerk and hurt themselves a little more, or pull a little more. So what I'm gonna do, once she settles down here a second, I'll go ahead and pull that slack out, get a little closer. That's what we don't want to happen, is the rope to get off, because now she feels like she's going to be able to get away. And so what we'll do, we'll grab her, we'll retie her. What we'll do, we just haltered the heifer, and what we'll do, we'll take her outside, walk her a little bit. This is actually the fourth time she's had our halter on. As we talked about before, we had her in a small pen, had to put the halter on, come in here in a little bigger pen, pulled her around a little bit. And then when I went to tie her up, she got a little antsy. She didn't like being tied up, but that's going to be part of it. Every animal's a little different. She ended up, tied her up, left her tied up for 30 minutes, came back and untied her, let her go. Later that evening, I came back and tied her up for another 30 minutes. And now, the next thing that I did after I tied her up, I saw that she was calming down. I just went ahead and walked her over to the wash rack, put some water on her, washed her a little bit, and got her used to me rubbing on her some more. And then I was able to pull her around pretty easy, and she actually fell really easy to the halter, and started responding to it really well. And so that's one thing about it. Like I said, every animal is different. You don't know how they're going to respond, but the biggest thing I encourage, be patient. Be patient with them. And I think they'll respond to it really well. What we're going to do now is go ahead and tie her up. Just want to show you when I tie her up, I get a little closer, because when there's a lot of slack, especially when you first put that halter on her, she has more room to hurt herself. But if you tie her up a little closer, what I'll do is make 2 laps around there. Then I come over, I'm holding this rope right here. I make a little slip knot. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to come over. I'm hanging onto this rope as it goes over. Then I bring this loop back in. And now she's tied. And then if she gets in a bind, it's a slip knot. It comes right out. So that's something to remember when you're tying them up. And so what I'll usually do is tie them up for about 30 minutes at a time. And it just gets them used to standing there. As we progress a little longer, I may tie them up for 45 minutes. It's one of them things when you get in a show ring, you have a steer or a heifer that just don't like to stand too well. She probably hasn't been tied for a long time. The more you tie them, the more they're used to just getting to be standing there, and they'll just stand there. That's one important reason to tie them. As we get progressing as well, I'll tie her with her head up. That way when you're in the show ring, she automatically holds that head up. If you don't tie them with their head up and you go in the show ring, your hand will get really tired of trying to hold that head up. But if she automatically knows she has to stand with her head up, then it'll be pretty relaxing for you. And so what we'll do now is we'll take her out in the bigger yard or area, and we'll show you how she's progressed here in the last 4 days. So she's a little camera shy, but still she's doing really well. We'll just walk her around, and as soon as I walked her to the wash rack, when I walk her, I was using the end of my rope. I was not right here at her head. I was using the end of the rope, and I just slowly pulled her a little bit at a time. And then she'd walk to me. I'd relieve the pressure. And same thing, and then finally she just picked up. As when I pulled, she just started walking. And one thing I want you to encourage to remember when you're starting to lead off with these animals and trying to teach them to lead, when you start pulling them on the head, remember it's like being in a tug-of-war match. Always get off to the side and pull them off to the side, and see how when they take a step, then you're able to get back to them. Remember, if you and me have a tug-of-war contest, I may outpull you all the time. But if I get off to the side and we pull like this, I'm going to come off balance. And then when I take that step, that's when you relieve the pressure. And that's one thing I want you to remember about leading. It's when you get a heifer or a steer out here and they stop, don't just try to pull them. Step off to the side, pull them off to the side, and they'll lead for you pretty well, and it won't take near as long teaching them to lead. And so that's what we've done with this heifer. Like I said, and all in all, when we put this video together, it's been a total of 4 days. And so she's going to be a good heifer to work with. One last piece of advice I would like to leave with you is when you go to set her up to get ready for showmanship for the show, practice doing it without a show stick. Remember, use the halter as your steering wheel. Watch the feet, and when they get set up, then you stop her. If you need to go back, push her back. As they learn, they'll learn that you can push forward or pull back, with this halter. And then that way, when you get in that ring, and you stop, you already know that they're going to walk into place. And you watch them as you pull them and get them stopped. You turn around, watch them walk into place. And I think that will help you in showmanship as well. And then that heifer always responds to you moving that halter back or forward, whether she goes forward or reverse. I appreciate y'all watching this for the University of Florida, and we thank y'all for your attendance. And if there's anything, we will have the question and answer session. Feel free, any questions you have, go ahead and ask them questions. That's how we learn, is ask questions. I'm still learning every day. I always ask questions. So thank y'all for watching, and I hope y'all enjoy.
All right, so I am here now with Matt Warren, who is a livestock judge and club calf producer. Matt, would you like to start off with a few poll questions?
Sure. Let's first see how many people were actually listening. Let's start off with what about the one? How many people's first time showing, or we got a poll question we're going to throw up here on the screen for those who are on Zoom here in just a second. I believe we got one that's talking about the experience of, what kind of experienced showman are you? And so
it says, how many times have you shown cattle? And if you would, on Facebook, just enter your response in the comment section. Never, but you're interested. One time, twice, or 3 or more times. 35% say they are experienced. They have shown 3 or more times. And then we have tied at 23% for the folks that have never showed or never, but they're interested.
Okay.
And
awesome.
Then 12% has shown 1 time and 8% twice.
Okay, good deal. So glad that everybody was able to join with this. I hope you enjoyed the video. This video is actually was just put together last month. It was a heifer that we just got out of the pasture. She probably weighs around 450. There are several questions asking what weight heifer do you usually start halter breaking. Usually around 450 is what I like to do, but when I get them into the barn, I like them to sit for about a week at the most before I actually start working with them, because what I like to do is break it down and let them get used to me. Remember, when them cattle get to your house, they're in a totally new area, and so they don't know who you are, they don't know where they're at and what they're doing, so they're a little nervous. That's not a good time to start trying to incorporate your halter breaking with them as well, because they're going to be nervous all to get, she's just come out of a pasture where she's been all her life. She's just getting away from her mom. And so you want to go ahead and give them, a few days, a week or so to settle down and let them see you feeding them as well. And then I usually start that halter breaking process. And so that's one of the things I wanted to make sure that y'all understand is you don't have to start the halter breaking project as soon as you get them home. Let them get settled in, and because it's a new place for them as well.
Okay, ready for another question?
Good deal. If you got questions, I know we've been answering a lot of them. How about, is there any questions off of Facebook that we haven't seen?
Yes, there was. We had a couple of people asking regarding best time to work with the animal. One
Okay.
was asking regarding the heat of day, and the other was asking about before or after feeding.
Okay, good deal. Awesome. That's a great question. I like to work with them. You know, sometimes it's just whenever you can work with them. But I like to work with them probably about 15 to 20 minutes at a time. When you start going into an hour or something, they get aggravated, you get aggravated, we all just get aggravated. And so I just like to go ahead and do about a 15 or 20-minute session. Maybe do one in the morning and let them go, and then in the evening and afternoon after it's cooled off a little bit. Right now, the steer that we have in the barn, I usually do not mess with him until later in the evening. Sometimes even after I eat dinner, you know, around 7 o'clock, 7:30. It is so hot right now. And so with a lot of them being black cattle, you know, they tend to get hotter, especially when you get them out there in the sunshine. And so I always like to wait till it gets a little cooler. One thing I do do a lot of is I'll take him to the wash rack and I'll put water on him and then I blow him off. I don't always put soap on him. Every time I take him to wash rack, I'm not always putting soap on him, but I may just put water on him, rub him, get that hair working with the rice comb the way you want to, and then I take him and blow them out. Remember, if you put water on them, try to blow them out because that water will get hot on them when it's just sitting there with their body temperature and it's locked inside that hair. So you want to blow them out after you wash them. But that helps calms them down, helps them get used to you rubbing on them as well.
Okay, we had another question about kicking. With a calf that even after their halter broke, kicking is a problem. Any suggestions?
Kicking, some calves just like to kick. You always just have to remember that they're animals and they do have that possibility. So if you got a kicker, the best thing I can say is you just got to show them everything. Because why they're kicking is because they're either scared or they're nervous about something. They don't like something. We had a heifer several years ago that every time you got right up around her underline, she want to kick at it. Well, she'll probably, you have to know that, but the more times you do it, you ease down there, then she'll get used to it a little more. But always, you got to keep your guard up and know when they're going to kick, because some of them, you just can't get the kick out of them because they'll just keep kicking. But most of the time, they do it because something's hurting them or they're scared for some reason. I did see one question, halter breaking a heifer or a bull or a steer. That was a question that was brought up during our last week session 2, or just I get the preview for this, but that's a good question. This heifer, you know, one thing I like to tell people is every animal is different, just like people. Some of them have great attitudes. Some of them you don't even want to be around them. I mean, it's just like people. They have the same different type of attitude. Heifers tend to be a little more go, 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 go. And so they may seem a little more coarser, harder to handle when you start off. But, you know, a lot of times it seems that the heifers end up leading a little better, wanting to walk and easier to go as you progress in your halter breaking. Bulls and steers are a little more lazy, just like us guys. We just sort of get a little lazy sometimes, especially when we get in the show ring. And y'all heard, those that have seen me heard me say on the mic several times that most of the time you have girls in the showmanship winning showmanship because they're really tense. They're there to win. They want, and it's the same thing. And the guys are so much more relaxed. Same thing when you're halter breaking a heifer and a bull or a steer. The bulls and steers are just, it's harder to get them to walk because they're so lazy. But yet the heifer tend to, you know, do a little better at that point.
Okay, Matt. All right, well, we are at time, but if you would like to give a very quick response to a couple of questions. One question is, do you have any advice for somebody that maybe doesn't have a small pen, the animal's in a larger pasture? Do you have anything quick?
Yeah, one thing, I think you need to try to find you some panels. We just use 4 panels and you can feed them in them panels, whether they're 12-foot panels. I believe that's what we use for 12-foot panels or 14-foot panels, whichever one you want to use. Feed them, get them used to coming in there. And so when they come into there, you have 4 panels just set up. Shut the panel, open one panel, feed them, and when they come in, shut it. And then you have a smaller pen to be able to work them with a little bit. The key that you're trying to do is break that barrier between you and him, break that flight zone. So he or she doesn't mind when you get up there, and so that time maybe you can go out in the pasture and just brush her with a comb or whatever. But that's what I would do.
Okay. And then one last question before we finish up. And then those of you that maybe you still have more questions or later you think of more questions, one of the things that we're going to be giving out at the end of this week is a field day booklet that's going to have all the information for our teachers, including an email address. So you'll be able to follow up with them if you have other questions. Also in the Youth Field Day booklet, there are notes on these class sessions, as well as some other tips, including tips that maybe Matt has already mentioned today. So you'll definitely want to check that out. And also you'll be getting a survey for the event at the end of the week. So we hope that you can take a few minutes to respond to that, to give us some great feedback and let us know everything you learned. And so one last question, Matt. Somebody asked, they have an animal that's already halter broke, but they haven't been around a show stick. Anything on getting them used to that show stick?
Basically, what you can do with a show stick, when they're halter broke and they're calm, you use a brush to brush them while they're tied up. Step back and just lay that show stick on top of them. And just like your extended arm, and just scratch them with it. And generally, scratch them a little further down until you get under their belly just a little bit. Or even you don't have to go to the belly. You can go to the brisket. Try to work them with the brisket just a little bit. Some of the calves like being scratched on the brisket versus the belly. And so if you're standing in front of them in the show ring, you can scratch them on that brisket just as easy as you can on the belly. And so what I always do is start from the top and work your way down slowly, and don't just all of a sudden put it up under their belly, but slowly work it down toward their belly, and just be consistent with it. And it just takes a little more practice and time. That's one thing I want you all to remember is you got to take some be consistent, and it takes some patience. Don't lose your temper on the calf when he messes up. Just go back, start again, and take your time with them.
Awesome, great. And any last minute advice, anything before we go to the previews for the next classes?
Well, I just thank you all for joining in. It's an awesome experience to be able to break your own calf. Remember, break down that flight zone is your most important step, trying to get that calf to break down the flight zone. And I love the little quote that says, when you get out there, practice like you never won, perform like you never lost. And so something always to remember, be consistent and practice, and do not ever hesitate to ask somebody that you want an answer from, ask them a question. I still do that every day. I pick people's brains, and I want to know what they think, so I'll ask questions. So don't hesitate to ask questions to somebody you may look up to, or somebody that you see that's doing well or doing good.
So
thank you all for watching.
Thank you, and have a good day. Bye-bye.